Welcome back. The title of this mini lecture is Influencers in Latin American Independence. And we're going to talk about five figures that, as you read about the independence era, that it's important to keep them in mind. Really kind of to get a sense of what's going on here and kind of the complexity of views, really. All right. So the first individual that I want us to know about is a figure by the name of Tupac Amaru II. Now, he's an Andean leader, and his time period is the late 18th century. The late 18th century across Latin America is kind of a time period where you're foreshadowing, right? So there's a lot of different kinds of events and individuals and themes and movements that are kind of setting the stage for the next 20 years that are going to occur kind of after this. Now, Tupac Amaru was partly involved in something called the Battle of Sangarara, and they're going to defeat Spanish forces, but a lot of these individuals are going to be killed. And it's really kind of his strong leadership and his really proudly Andean, proudly Incan leadership that is really going to run him afoul of Spanish authorities. Now, he's caught and killed. And what his movement kind of leads to is this real backlash against anything Incan, within Peruvian society at the point, in this colonial Peruvian society at this time. So Tupac Amaru really, the second, he really kind of represents, again, this kind of question of national identity, that's kind of going on here in this age and really kind of setting us up again for revolution or for independence a little bit later. Now, the second figure for us to keep in mind is a guy by the name of Tiradentes. Now, Tiradentes is a Brazilian figure who in 1789 had tried to organize a revolt inspired really in part by the American Revolution. Now, he's caught and eventually put on trial and he's executed. And this shows a couple of things, right? It certainly shows kind of the role of Brazilian kind of legal structures in the colonial period. It certainly shows the influence of the Americans here. And Brazil, of course, is going to take a somewhat different path than some of these other nations in Latin America during the independence age. So he's a key figure for us to know. The third figure for us to be aware of is a woman by the name of Manuela Sáenz. She was the lover of Simón Bolívar and was a revolutionary, an active revolutionary in her own right, and deserves to be recognized as such. She helps Bolívar to escape from a number of assassination attempts and is largely exiled, actually, after Bolívar's death in the year 1830. Now, she dies a number of years later, but she lives a life of relative obscurity, kind of after 1830, and the focus on her has only grown, in recent years, and it really kind of begs the question, this idea of the role of women in the era of independence, the question of how were they treated during that time, and really how do we think about gender when it comes to legacies of major eras, essentially like this. Now, a fourth figure for us to keep in mind here is another woman by the name of Gertrudis Bocanegra. She was married to a Spanish officer and was really important in helping a number of revolutionaries and independence folks in 1817 to try to recapture a town. She is caught. She's tortured and is executed, and again reflects the conflicted nature, right, of this time and the brutality of this time period as well. A fifth figure for us to kind of keep in mind would be Josefa Ortiz de Dominguez, and she's an interesting figure too. She's a real key figure too. She was the wife of a colonial official, a corregidor. She had 14 children, and she kind of uses her position and her home as kind of a place or platform from which she can kind of carry out revolutionary activity. Now, within Mexico, certainly Bocanegra was key, but for Dominguez, her connections to the Cry of Dolores or the Grito de Dolores speech in 1810 really kind of are what draw us to some of this as well. She's going to be imprisoned and will spend part of or most of the the independence age, in a series of different forms of imprisonment. She'll be released after this time, after independence, and she as well, really felt that she didn't get the recognition that she deserved, once this is all over. All right. Thank you so much.